Hello and welcome to the Goldfinger Report on Millennium News TV 24. So happy to have on the show today Dr. Pepper Hernandez, very special doctor. She deals with a special plant that we're going to talk about today, sacred plant medicine, even. Um, Many different names for it. Dr. Pepper Hernandez, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Todd. Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate you.
Indeed. So we have some questions for you about what is the plant cannabis and what is the cannabinoid system?
So, the plant cannabis is an ancient plant that we've been using as a human species for over 12,000 years. It has only in the last 90 years had a stigma, has been stigmatized as something we shouldn't use, but our indigenous native peoples have been using it since the beginning of time. The cannabis plant in its whole plant form, which is the way I like to use it, has so many beneficial properties from ingesting it through juicing, through making it, pulverizing it, drying it, pulverizing it, and making it into a salve, or smoking it as a flower. Across the board, there are so many uses for cannabis. I joke around and say there are 83,000 ways to use cannabis. And that comes in place with the way we're consuming it, the way we are utilizing it in its form, whether it's juicing or flour or concentrate, and then also the way the body utilizes it. So we have an endocannabinoid system, which is built to work with cannabinoids. Now, not just cannabis, it's not the only one that has cannabinoids. There are other plants such as basil, cacao. These things also have cannabinoids, which is why you see them, as plant allies in the medicine kingdom. You see them working, a lot of people putting them together. I love cacao and cannabis. That's like my jam. And the other thing I would like people to know, or your listeners or audience to know, is that we can utilize cannabis non psychoactively. It doesn't have to be this intense, spiritual awakening with this ethnogen. Now, even though that is also a great possibility, the cannabis plant, is so versatile that about anyone can take it, utilize it in whatever method they choose, as long as they're microdosing and baby stepping into it. So it's just, those questions are great and they're so broad, and I could go on for hours about each of them.
Sure. Because from my understanding, there's a very big stigma attached to the plant cannabis, and for a long time, seems. Maybe you can tell the audience how we can reduce the stigma.
Well, I'm lucky, as in I have been in Humboldt County for over 12 years now. I've had a private practice here for the last decade. And the people I interact with on a daily basis are not people coming from that, place of demonizing, if you will, the cannabis plant. Most people I'm working with understand cannabis, and they're even coming in with other questions about other plant medicines. So I'm working with a very open minded group of people. However, I can see how in different countries, the miseducation or the uneducated people have not done maybe their history homework, or haven't really spoken to a cannabis patient who has survived cancer, or myself, worked with cannabis specifically, and I maintain my health and wellness and well-being, and so I can, stay away from all the epileptic or seizure scares that my body is susceptible to. So when you start hearing those stories and you start really doing the research on how this plant is simply a plant, right? Then you can start to put pieces together and recognize, oh, well, this might be silly to even have demonized the plant and gone in a direction. And then it starts to make you think, and here's the conspiracy piece. Then it makes you start to think, why did they change that in 1937 in the US? Like, why has it been demonized for, in the early 1900s? Like, why did this happen? And we start to recognize it's the pharmaceutical companies shifting and us wanting to consume more of those, and not saying that those aren't great and they don't work, because they absolutely do. I think it's a balance between both. But I do think we've strayed away from plant medicine. So I think just with those a couple pieces, those three little points there, I think people can start tuning in and doing their own research and recognizing this is just a plant and it's helping a lot of people. And maybe the reason why it was demonized in the first place wasn't in our best interest.
Very interesting. Now, we understand that it's a female plant, and the female plant can make us happy, actually. From what I understand, my understanding of it, because for many years I was depressed, almost 30 years of really dark depression. And one of the things that has helped me with the depression and anxiety has been actually cannabis. And so I'm actually coming out as a pro-cannabis person. For many years, as a child, the war on drugs in the 80s had a big effect on a lot of people, and I've seen the errors of my ways, and just want to thank you for being on the show today and talking about it, because it's not an easy subject. It's something that's, I think, quite taboo oftentimes, but see it in the news, and we've seen it with even a basketball player that was detained. So there's some things regarding that. So in my opinion, just if I may say, is that I believe that this plant should be decriminalized on a federal level. And once that is done, I think there will be a lot less cruelty and hopefully less inequality in that regard. Anything you'd like to add, Dr. Pepper?
Well, just I agree with you on that. And I think that just in the US, which is an interesting country on its own, there are certain states where it's completely legal. Thank goodness I'm in, I spend half time in Oklahoma and half time here in California. And I'm lucky enough for it to be legal. Now, driving to and from those states, I can't carry anything with me. Flying, that's questionable as well. So I make sure that I have my medicine in each of those states. So when I get there, I can make sure to get right back on my maintenance routine. Now, remember, mine is non-psychoactive. I use a tincture. The cannabis that I actually use is a Ringo's Gift, which is truly considered a CBD because it has a very high percentage of CBD. But the to your point, it's interesting to think in that way, that if I cross through, say, Texas, that could be really dangerous, even with just CBD tincture, right? And so it's interesting. And I think that once we do get federally legal, which may not happen as soon as we want to, Todd, but when that does happen, we'll see a lot of infrastructures and states have to rethink what they're doing with cannabis. And it could be a little embarrassing for a lot of people who have been anti-cannabis for so long, and now it's healing their family members. And I think that's the piece. When it starts healing your family, when it starts healing yourself, you really open your eyes and you're like, oh, there's something to this, right? And so I've been seeing it for a decade, for over 10 years, helping people and seeing them heal and move through life, whether it be as acute as simple anxiety to as chronic as cancer or digestive issues or Crohn's or whatever it be. I mean, across the board, we're seeing people heal themselves. Now, the tricky part is, what do they consume? How do they consume it? What cultivar do they get? All of those little things dial in. And that's where I come in. I'm like the super canna geek when it comes to that. I love dialing all that stuff in. I love getting protocols for people, but that's also going to be working with people in states that are legal and also have access. We have other states where there illegal, and we have to work around that as well. So I don't want to go too much into the decriminalization because, you know, I don't work in, I'm not an attorney. I don't work in that particular field. I am passionate about it. I will say this piece and then we can move on, that I think it's just not fair that some states are legal and some states are not. And I don't think it's fair that people have gone to jail and spent so much of their life in jail or in prison, even for a planted roach or a seed. And there are people now, without calling out anybody, there are people now who are making large, I mean, excessively large amounts of money processing and producing poor quality, by the way, poor quality cannabis and shoving it out to people. And that's the piece that just doesn't make sense for me. And so I don't want to get too into it because I could get passionate. And there's a lot of people who could speak to that platform that are more educated in that realm than I am. But that is where I stand.
That's wonderful. Now, this plant, you mentioned Crohn's disease as one of the illnesses that the plant cannabis could actually treat. What are some other illnesses that the cannabis plant can treat?
I want to clarify by saying I don't think it treats Crohn's specifically. I think it helps with digestion, but Crohn's is a much bigger animal that we need to tackle. That is emotional, physical, spiritual, mental well-being. That is a solar chakra digestive issue. And so it is truly about someone looking at all of those pieces. It's not just, oh, let's take a little cannabis. Woo, we're fine. That's not how that works. Cannabis is such a spiritual plant that it helps you look at those deeper, much like in the entheogens. It helps you look at those deeper issues within yourself and within your reality. And you start to shift, whether it's a psychoactive version of the plant that you're using or not. Now, I don't ever suggest people using isolated concentrates. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the whole plant where some of the cultivar or the specific cultivar maybe has a higher count of CBD, CBG, CBN, and a lower count of THC. That's what I mean. I'm not saying go out and get CBD isolate. That is not in my realm of world. That's not the direction we're going with clients or medical patients. There are a array of I suppose diagnostics that can be helpful. So let me tell you this, Todd. Cannabis comes in and balances the endocannabinoid system. It creates homeostasis within the body. When it does that, and you're consuming great whole food, you're drinking water, and you're getting every aspect of your reality in balance, meaning meditation, light exercise, not heavy pressurized exercise, but you're mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally getting back into alignment with yourself. Cannabis can be one of those beneficial plants or herbs that will help you excel and get to the place that you want to be. So with that being said, the endocannabinoid system, when it's balanced, it can help balance all the other 11 body systems. So now we're talking glandular system, muscular, skeletal, nervous system for me specifically. And so it starts to balance all of those, and you see benefit in a positive, more relaxed way. So I could almost lean in and say it helps everything, but it's not just the plant itself. The plant is the teacher, and she will motivate you to also get into alignment in a holistic way. So it's the whole picture here.
Very interesting. And holistic picture, very good. Quantum Alignment Podcast. What is that and where can we find it? Maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, so thank you for asking. That is a podcast I've been doing for 3 years now, going on 4. We started doing it for Access Humboldt, a radio station here in Humboldt County, California, and then expanded and started doing it on, anywhere you find podcasts, I suppose. But that podcast is specifically interviewing healers. And it was the first couple years, it was just around our community. I just wanted to truly meet other healers in my community, find out what they were doing. It was a reference and resource for myself. So when clients came to me and I wanted to refer them out or build a group for them, I could pull in other practitioners, physicians, and healers. So that's how it started. And then it just continued. I was enjoying it so much and we were having so much fun with it. And my producer at Access Humboldt was wanting more content. So we started, and then COVID happened. So then we started expanding and asking people specifically to come in and speak on entheogens and molecules, which was such a fun year. So we got to talk to people like all over the world on, DMT and combo and ayahuasca and like all these like really interesting things. So that's kind of the story behind quantum alignment. But quantum alignment, what it means is to align yourself in a very quantum way. So mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. A decade ago, I was in my practice and one of my clients asked, what is this that you're doing? Because we had had an hour and a half conversation and I had brought in, oils and was kind of asking her about, her relationship. Like we just talked about everything. And I said, I don't know. She's like, well, this isn't just you're not just a naturopath. And I said, okay. And so I took a meditation time break on that. And I'm a Kundalini yogi. And I took some time and really meditated. And that's the word that dropped in was quantum alignment. And that was a decade ago. That was like way before people started using the word or the words in conjunction. And so then the podcast kind of blossomed out of this. It's like, what are you doing? Like, that's the question. You're like, what are you doing? And so it's really fun to interview people and then get little nuggets of wisdom from all of these healers and all of these modalities. And they're all coming back to the same thing. Be true to yourself, eat well, drink water. We're getting the same conversation, meditate. It's coming back to the same. And so it's really beautiful to hear it from so many different people in so many different ways. And yeah, it's just been a fun podcast.
Excellent. That sounds really, really wonderful. Um, what is the Compassion Project? Maybe you can tell us a bit about that as well.
Well, I don't know which one you're referring to. I have quite a few compassion projects now.
The one that's listed on your website.
Hmm. Still not certain. I have a few. I'll tell you about them.
Please.
There is, let's see, my nonprofit, maybe the Humboldt nonprofit. That's a compassion project. The podcasts are compassion projects, both the quantum alignment as well as joint discussions. That's a conversation between myself and other people in the cannabis world. And it's kind of just a raw conversation that we have about real topics, about, the industry and how people are making a lot of money in the industry and cannabis might be really crappy and just really raw questions about cannabis industry. And it's just fun. So I have those two. Those are compassion projects. I also have a clubhouse that I do weekly every Tuesday for the Cannabis Holistic Institute, which is the institute I am the founder and educational director of. So those are all compassion projects. And when I say compassion, I simply mean I'm doing them for free. And spending a lot of my time doing them. Most of my time is dedicated to those projects. And it's simply my give back to the United States, the world, to humans, to the population. And if something can be said in any of those platforms to spark someone else's want or need to, heal themselves or find just a little message in any of that and better their lives, like that is what I call a compassion project, where I'm just doing it completely of my own time and heart, just simply for others.
That's wonderful. I hope everyone hears that message and goes out there and does something nice for somebody else as well. Dr. Pepper, it's really been a great pleasure having you on the show. How can people find you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so you can find me across all social media platforms at Dr. Pepper Hernandez. My website is drpepperhernandez.com. I'm on FB, IG, TikTok, YouTube. It's out there.
That's great. Thank you so much for being on the program and hope to see you again soon. Have a great day, Dr.
Yeah,
Pepper.
thank you.
Thank you too.